Hi, this is Adam Eliel Berkowitz from Israel 365 News. I'm here with a very dear friend who I think is bringing the Third Temple in a very active way. This is Jim Barfield. He runs the Copper Scroll Project. This book was written by another friend, Shelley Neese. I highly recommend it. The Copper Scroll Project is something that when you first hear about it, you're like, no, it can't be. And it's absolutely true. So Jim, what's the Copper Scroll?
The Copper Scroll is a document that was written about the time of Jeremiah. And it really wasn't written. It was hammered. They hammered out some sheets, 3 sheets. And they riveted them together, and they made one document. The document was written by 5 men, and each one of them had to write their information or tap their information into these copper sheets in ancient Hebrew letters. When they did that, each one of those 5 men had their own set of treasures, temple treasures, that they selected places to hide it. And I'll tell you where that's at in here in a few minutes.
First of all, if I may, the Copper Scroll was found before the State of Israel. It is technically considered one of the Dead Sea Scrolls. It was found in the Dead Sea area, but it's unusual in 2 respects. One is that it is made out of copper, and the other Dead Sea Scrolls are not. And the other respect is the point that you just raised, which is most of the Dead Sea Scrolls, they have different subject matter. Some of them are even secular, but having to do with secular matters. But the Copper Scroll is unique in its subject matter, and you're kind of glossing over it, but I don't think people realize the import of it.
Huge.
It's a shopping list. It's actually a treasure map, like in the most simple terms. It is a treasure map. These guys hid huge amounts of gold and silver, and they just hid it because the Romans were coming?
No. Babylonians,
right. The Babylonians were coming.
Now, there are people that would argue that, but I don't care.
Okay, so they hid it. And we're talking about, I mean, the Second Temple was big business, and they had a lot of gold and silver, and I think there was even a saying that gold and silver was like common in Jerusalem at the time.
Certainly silver, yeah.
And people didn't get too excited about it, but there was a huge amount of gold and silver that was hidden away, and we have the treasure map, and no one's ever really found it, and it's public knowledge. So that's the shocking part.
It is. It's a verbal treasure map. I don't really like to call it a treasure map because it makes me sound like I'm a treasure hunter. I am not a treasure hunter. I've got some very important things in my heart because I believe that when these things are taken out of the ground, like several ancient books say, that it will be the time of the coming of the Messiah and the time of the regathering of the nation of Israel. That the gathering of the nation of Israel has already begun. Now we need to get the Messiah back.
Okay. I actually didn't want to talk to Jim specifically about the Copper Scroll Project because I've written a lot of articles. I'll put the links below. And if you want to hear about it, I'd highly recommend you hear about it from Jim himself. He runs around the country speaking to people. He's in Israel right now, which is why we're sitting in my living room. And he's very busy about this. But Jim, you said something that I found very interesting. You said, everyone, they want to give you the impression that COVID shut the world down. And we're just barely waking up now. You told me something when you came in. You said that the last 2 years have been double overtime for you.
Yeah, I've been very busy, but it's on things that we needed to get prepared for, making contacts and staying ahead of the curve. It's difficult. COVID really did cause us some problems. It put a lot of other things on hold. We couldn't travel. We couldn't come back. I haven't been here in almost 3 years now.
I know. I haven't seen you.
And I was coming just about at least once or twice a year prior to that.
Wow.
So it did create some problems, but there's more coming and potentially more problems.
When you say more coming, what do you mean?
More coming problems.
No.
That's what I'm talking about. More issues or could potentially develop. Anything to do with the temple is there's always going to be some opposition to it.
That's a good point, and I'd highly recommend reading the book. One of the surprising things, first of all, as I said, it's shocking what the Copper Scroll Project is. The fact that basically at our fingertips, if we decided to turn around and look at it, is all this material, all this wealth that was dedicated to the temple, and so many things are standing in the way. So many practical things, bureaucracy. When you read the Copper Scroll Project, it's just there's so many things standing in the way of just going there and digging up the gold and silver, which should be easy. But as Jim said, the opposition to the Third Temple is very real, which for most people you wouldn't understand it. But so
it's very real, and it's more political. And maybe even spiritual. Oh, yes, even spiritual. Let me just say it that way.
Okay.
But politics are involved. Oh my goodness.
I think everything is spiritual, and people make it sound like it's political or economic, but it's all spiritual.
Thank you.
One of the unusual things about the Copper Scroll, as I said, it's in Jordan. It's in a museum in Jordan. It's not in Israel. And the reason is, at the time it was found in Qumran, which is along the Dead Sea, people refer to it as the West Bank because at the time it was illegally occupied by Jordan. And I think that one of the reasons why there is so much governmental opposition from the Israeli government to going forward with the Copper Scroll Project is because anything that's found archaeologically, even if it clearly belongs to the Jewish people, since it's found in an area that is disputed territory, it will be disputed. Especially if we find huge amounts of gold and silver, Palestinian Authority is going to come along and say, oh, we the Palestinians have been there forever. There never was a temple, which is what Arafat claimed to Bill Clinton at Camp David, and Bill Clinton was shocked. The Arabs literally have pushed this propaganda that there never was a temple. So therefore, if we find gold and silver, even if it comes from scrolls that specifically say the temple and are written in Hebrew, they will claim that it's theirs. And we recently had a case where the Biden administration gave back a spoon that was an artifact, I think it was over 2,000 years old, found in the hills of Hebron, and they gave it back, as they'd like to say, to the Palestinian Authority. It was, I think, Phoenician, so therefore they couldn't exactly say it belonged to Israel, but it certainly did not belong to the Palestinians. But they gave it to them anyway. So, Jim, I'll ask you a very straight question. Go with it. You're a straight guy. Do you think that by opposing annexation, opposing Israel, expressing sovereignty over parts of the country that are biblically Israel and have been Israel, and that we won in a defensive war, do you think that the Biden administration is an obstacle to the Third Temple?
Yes.
There you go.
Yes, I do. I think it's anything opposing anything to do in what is called the West Bank is a hindrance to anything, everything Jewish. And everything that most of the world is looking forward to, a coming of a Messiah, the return of the kingdom, the restoration of the kingdom, it's a hindrance, and it's ridiculous. I mean, you've got to be pretty simple-minded not to see that this country belongs to Israel, the Jewish people. Now, that expands out to a lot of other people, because when the temple's rebuilt, you know this, it'd be a house of prayer for all people.
That's the point. That's another thing that the Biden administration has opposed.
Yeah.
They oppose a house of prayer for all nations. They oppose, and it's funny, that I've seen that within the Catholic Church, there are huge problems, because on one hand, they want to be politically good with the American government, but they're denying the Bible. And they're denying a lot of the basic principles. They're certainly denying the Bible insofar as it relates to the Jews in Israel. And I think they're also, I mean, it starts with Israel, but it includes evangelicals, Protestants, and even Catholics. Yeah. They have a problem with what the administration is presenting. They're presenting, how can you say, oh no, the Jews never lived in Israel? Well, where's the Bible? It's gone.
Thank you. Yeah, and not only that, for example, Nancy Pelosi. I am not Catholic, and I, with all due respect, I have no affiliation with them. But even the Catholics are saying, you know what? Yeah. You stay back where you are. Biden, you stay back. We don't want to get associated with you because of that. That's kind of strange.
So this opposition, it's kind of funny. Even if you don't agree with the Third Temple, it is the opposition to the Bible.
It is.
It's not just opposition to Israel.
Right.
There's a big underlying. So if we find all this stuff, which is basically a whole bunch of gold and silver, what's the next step?
Next step is getting it housed, and we'll have to have a place to take this up. You're not talking a small treasure chest. You're talking tons, literally tons. There's one location has enough gold for this room. Let's say 10 feet long,
really?
2 feet high. Yes, 2 feet high, and that's a lot of gold. That's a tremendous amount of gold. It's by one location, almost $2 billion worth of gold, and pure gold.
It's funny. The Vatican, I learned, is actually architecturally and conceptually based on the temple. Mm-hmm. It was a recreation. It was the new temple. And historically, the Vatican was a country unto itself economically. Mm-hmm. It represented a big economic entity. So it could be that the Third Temple, boosted by your find, if they get all this gold and silver, it's going to be like a competition with the Vatican economically.
Mm-hmm. It's Israel's going to experience. I'm not a money guy, so I don't know how this all works. But can you imagine what that would do to the country's wealth? How that will establish, and of course they use that for borrowing, lending, and borrowing. But they shouldn't do that. I'm telling you, they better just take these items and lock them away, because that gold and silver, those gems that are out there, they're building material. They're for the vessels, that sort of thing, and they better not do anything with it other than store it away for now.
Well, in Jewish law, there's a concept of what we call hekdesh, means sanctified, meaning, and there's a sin called me'ilah, which is deriving benefit from something that's sanctified. Mm-hmm. So, for example, I sanctify a horse to the temple. You can't sacrifice it, but they'll sell it and use the money for the temple, but I cannot use the horse. Mm-hmm. Because it's been sanctified. Mm-hmm. So this gold and silver, which you found at that time, was sanctified to the temple. We cannot use it for secular purposes. The temple was a huge business.
Yeah.
And it was, Jerusalem was an extension of that business. So the public works, the infrastructure was funded mm-hmm. by the temple. And they had the half shekel tax. It was big business. Mm-hmm. It was a huge business. And so money was an essential part of it. This gold and silver was sanctified to the temple. We can't touch it. Mm-hmm. So if we find it, it's going to be an interesting thing. It certainly was not sanctified to be used by the Palestinian Authority.
No, it wasn't.
That I'm pretty sure about.
Now, why do you think that? And because I promise you, the upper echelons in Israel know about this project.
Yes.
They know about this project. They know that the possibilities are out there. Why wouldn't they want to dig it up?
Right. That's an interesting question. You would think that if someone comes along and says, look, here's a map, billions of dollars of gold and silver, billions. You would think they would be falling over themselves trying to dig it up. I certainly think that part of it is that if they dig it up, there will be too many other people, Jordan and the Palestinian Authority, jumping in saying, oh, it's ours. And unfortunately, with the way the world is going, say, oh, no, it never belonged to Israel. There never was a temple. And Israel never existed near the Dead Sea. And even within the world of archaeology, for many, many years, there was a branch of archaeologists who said that King David never existed. There's a school of thought in the world of archaeology, which recent finds, the stele, the Tel Dan stele, actually are foreign sources that referred to King David. So now we're finding that the Bible is irrefutably factual, historically correct. But even so, there's a war where the Palestinian Authority is destroying archaeological artifacts, archaeological sites. They recently just built they're building a development town on top of the altar of Joshua, just paving it over.
No.
Oh yeah. If you look at it, you want to cry when you look at the aerial photographs. They just right exactly where it was. They put down an asphalt road, and they're planning. And what's crazy is it's funded by the Europeans. It's Area C according to the Oslo Accords, which means it should be for Israeli development.
Exactly right.
And the European Union and the European sources are funding massive amounts of building in Area C, and they're not funding any building in Area A, which the Palestinians should have. So it's not that they're being pro-Palestinian; they're explicitly being anti-Israeli, and especially when it comes to archaeology. Because the Bible, they may not believe in the Bible, but they don't like the archaeology because it supports the Bible.
It does,
and makes their claims seem very foolish. So here we have the Copper Scroll. It's crazy. They don't want the gold and silver, because the gold and silver would be proof that
that's it.
That the temple was real. I'm Jewish. I have no personal connection with Jesus, but if you say there was no temple, well, that means that any stories about people who happen to walk in the temple, well, that's obviously not true either. And I think Christians have a personal big interest in saying that there was a person or people who walked around in the temple. So if anyone who denies that, well, that's a problem.
Then you're denying your own faith. You're denying a lot of things that are tied directly to that.
Exactly. So this is, on one hand, it's archaeology, and on the other hand, it's really a story of faith, faith from the past, and also faith, what we're going to do with our faith in the future. If you have faith in the Bible, then you want to talk about the Third Temple, and that would include the Copper Scroll Project. I have this rule when I make videos, never to make a full video. You always want the people to want a little more and to ask more questions. So I highly recommend the Copper Scroll Project. Shelley Neese wrote it. Jim Barfield lived it. And God willing, we'll all be living it in the near future when we have a huge building project, very well funded, God willing. Thank you very much. This is Jim Barfield, Adam Elio Berkowitz. Be blessed from the Holy Land. Thank you so much. See you soon.